All right. Hello and welcome to Plugin Along, a stream dedicated to LOTRO plugins. Last time on Plugin Along, we started looking at the Hytbold Assistant plugin by Galuhad. It was last updated in 2013, and there have been some changes to Hytbold, mostly the costs of rebuilding it, and I've had some ideas for an update. So today we're going to continue with the first of those thoughts, which is a quest helper for one of the trickier quests during the rebuilding of Hytbold. So today we're still looking, just like we were last week, at the dress up quest. So as always, feel free to jump into chat with your thoughts and questions. And in the meantime, let's go ahead and share my desktop here. Okay, so the first of the two things I thought would make this quest easier is be able to kind of record what the current dress up is. And the first of my thoughts was to be able to have a /Hytbold, a quest helper that would allow you to use an image selector to determine which of the parts of the model are from which outfit. And so we just started last time in making the concept of kind of an image carousel where you have a left button and a right button, an image in between, and you hit the left and the right, and you're cycling between those images. So we had the very basics of what that might look like last time. This time I want to go ahead and pull that out into its own little component. We're going to call this like an image carousel. And that's going to let us make this a little bit more modular. So we can have one image carousel for each of the 6 parts of the body. And that might be a little bit trickier when we get to the gloves, but for every other part of the model, we can go ahead and just hold this next to it, use the carousel to select the right part, the right outfit, and yeah, we'll see how that goes. Okay, so, so for those who are not familiar, Hytbold is a destroyed but rebuildable city in the eastern part of Rohan. Eastern Rohan is unlocked during the Riders of Rohan expansion, so it just arrived here on Treebeard, and primarily consists of the regions the Wold, the Norcrofts, Sutcrofts, and Entwash Vale. Those are the 4 regions whose help you'll use to rebuild Hytbold. And then we also have access to Wildemore, which is kind of endgame content for level 85. That's not going to be relevant here. So if you're looking at the map for the Sutcrofts, you're going to see Hytbold right here on the border kind of between the Sutcrofts and the East Wall, which is part of the Wold, and Norcrofts. Really, it's just Entwash Vale, which just doesn't have a connection to it. Let's see. Closest we get to... Okay, go away. Yeah, not so much. I guess we get to here, which is kind of... Yeah, no. But it's kind of in the border of Norcroft's East Wall and the Wold, the East Wall part of the Wold, and Sutcrofts. Cool. So once you get to level 84, you get a summons to Hytbold to start the rebuilding process. In Hytbold, you can get the Aiding the Eastern Net quest. While you have the Aiding the Eastern Net quest, you can get a variety of quests in each of the 4 hubs for those 4 regions. For the Wold, you're looking at Harwick here in the middle of the Wold. And usually it's next door, or right next to the Mead Hall. So in this case, we're just around the side of the Mead Hall here in Harwick. For the other regions, if you're in the Norcrofts, it's Cliving. If you're in the Sutcrofts, it's Snowburn. And if you're in Entwash Vale, it's Aylworth. So the pattern is that one of them will have various pairs of quests that you'll go to public instances to complete. So in this case, there's 2 in Defense of Harwick that you can go into a public instance. Usually one of them is a Slayer thing, defeat X number of enemies, and the other one is something more mechanistic. And in this case, getting close to enemies and calling down rains of arrows upon them. Do that maybe 5 times, and you've completed the objective. Another one, defeating things in Dihilan, but also finding mushrooms. that kind of thing. Defeat enemies in Gerngarth, but also find Tomes of Lore. So that's the pattern. Each one of the 4 locations has one quest giver who gives usually about 4 pairs of those quests. One of them will have a quest to go defeat mounted enemies in an area of that region that you're in. So defeat 10 in the eastern plains of the Wold, or Norcross, Sutcross, or why can't I remember? And Washvale. So that one, if you are a melee character, is probably the most annoying one, because you either have to, get yourself close enough to these mounted units that like to move themselves away from you, or if you're a fan of mounted combat on war mounts, that's fine. But otherwise, you're gonna have to get on a war mount and chase them down. It's much easier if you have a ranged character, minstrel, hunter, whatever, where you can just pick them off at range, and it doesn't matter if you're on foot or not. Each of the 4 clusters has that one quest giver who does that. And then the final quest giver is kind of what I would call more oddball stuff, or more unique things. In Harwick, for instance, there's one where there's a hobby horse race around town. You follow a track throughout town. If you hit all of the checkpoints within the certain amount of time given, then you complete the hobby horse race. One of them is Rohirrim and Bandits. It's essentially a game of tag with the children of Harwick. You have to get to them. The tag, though, is an induction, just like picking up letters for honoring heroes in Midsummer. So you have to kind of get a little bit ahead of the children so that they don't run too far away by the time your induction ends. And the final one here is Dress Up, where you must go around town and find the same articles from 3 different sets of clothing. You have to pick the same 6 that the model is wearing, come back to the model, with the caveat that the model will change every once in a while. I'm not sure on the exact timing, if anyone knows that. I'd love to know, but it's like every hour or something the model changes. So it's not going to change rapidly, but you might find that by the time you've picked up a thing and come back to the model has changed. I'd love to get a timing on that, so a quest helper could, be telling you, oh, you only have 5 minutes left. But I haven't taken the time to get real timing information there. And there's one of the children for the game of tag, the Rohirrim and Bandits. Okay, so that's just an overview of Hytbold, in case you weren't sure what's going on. These quests are only available if you have Aiding the Easternmet. You can come and pick up any number of these quests while you have Aiding the Easternmet open. If you have Aiding the Easternmet active while you are completing these quests, then after the 5th one, Aiding the Easternmet will be completed, and any other Hytbold quests that you've picked up will be auto-dropped. However, if you drop Aiding the Easternmet, you can complete as many as you want of the Hytbold quests. So a way to kind of maximize your Hytbold progress on a particular day is to pick up Aiding the Easternmet, pick up every quest in a location, or all the locations if you have room in your quest log, drop Aiding the Easternmet, and then complete the quests for one or more locations. In that manner, you can complete, I think, 49 total quests. Each one awards 10 of these tokens of Hytbold when you complete it, not to mention 1,200 reputation with the region that you're in, Wold, Sutcroft, Norcross, and Washvale. And so you can get a lot of reputation and a lot of tokens if you do not let Aiding the Easternmet complete before you want it to. Lord Yeti in chat says, Happy 4th to you USA people. They live in Panama. They moved before COVID. Yeah, as someone who once lived in the United States and currently lives in the Netherlands, the 4th of July, just a lot less important to our neighbors here than it once was. For some reason, they just don't celebrate. But I have coworkers who do live in the U.S., and they are off today. So, yes. Happy 4th to those people who want to have a happy 4th. Okay, so that's a general summary of Hytbold. We are in one of the clusters, and usually the oddball quests are the ones that are the most interesting or odd. For instance, there's a dressage one where you have to mimic the emotes of the of an NPC who's standing there doing one of 5 things. And in a cycle, they will either be drinking or flexing or cheering or charging or laughing. The order I think is random, seems random, but it will always just be each of those 5 in an order. So one of my in the back of my head for that is to have an assistant for dressage, which is just remember which one of the 5s you have or haven't done yet. When you click it, it just kind of moves it from a needs to be done to a has been done row or something. I do that manually right now. I have the 5 of these, and then when I do one, I just move it down, move it down, move it down. So the ones I have to look out for to do just get lower and lower. Then they're all down. Then the next time I'm doing dressage, I just move them back up. It's an error-prone activity, though, because I could easily just drag them off completely without meaning to, and then I have to find them again. And so putting that into a helper, which maybe will also have one of the meaningful images of the emote that you can match to, all of that can streamline a little bit. Yeti in chat asks, can you make a plugin to rename carryalls? And the answer is almost. In the Lua API, which is how we interact with the game as a plugin. In fact, let's go ahead and pull that up here, the documentation. This is the Lua API documentation. And in the API, this is what determines how you can interact with the game state. And so one of the things you can do is look at an item and get item information. Cool. So when we pull something out of the storage, when something comes into your inventory, there is an item ID that we could potentially use as a plugin to differentiate between 2 different carryalls. Oh, that's number 17. This is number 23. The numbers are much longer than that, but that's the idea. But we do not have access to that same ID when looking at information in your backpack. So it's a very transient thing. Sorry, it may not be when you pull it out of shared storage. It may be when you click and drag it and drop it onto a shortcut panel. So in some very specific instances, we can get that internal ID of a carryall and could potentially use that to differentiate between them. But without that, without being able to see that all the time, we could only do that in rare cases. So you could make a plugin where you click and drag it into the plugin and it tells you which carryall that was. Oh, that was, you named this whatever, but you wouldn't be able to see that all the time. And so it's a very niche idea. So we need a couple of tweaks to the LOTRO API in order for that to be a more useful thing for a plugin to do. That being said, I recommend 2 things for dealing with carryalls. The first is I tend to purchase carryalls, and so you're talking to someone who has a lot of carryalls. Let's start with that. So if I do a search for carryalls, I have 3, 6, 10, 12, 13, 19, 23 over here on Treebeard. I don't have a problem. I can quit anytime. But, so what I do is, when I buy carryalls, normally I buy them with a purpose. I have a few of them that are just kind of extra because they were on sale. I'm just like, well, I'm going to want them someday. But mostly I buy them with a purpose. And so I tend to know what that purpose is. So when I have metals, like you get a bunch of metals as a harvester of metals and as a prospector in the game. And so I have a bucket called metal/crit. And so that's where I put the carryalls related to that. So let's take a look at that. I know the game is very consistent about sorting 2 different carryalls relatively next to each other. So this carryall right here will always sort to the left of this one, and this one will always sort to the right of this one and to the left of that one. We don't have anything more, but it is very consistent. So if I pull them out in that order, then I know in my inventory, this was the one on the left, this was the one in the middle, and this was the one on the right. So I know I know because I have sorted it this way, the one on the right is where all of my crit items are. So I can open that up, and any of the things related to crafting critting is in there because that's how I have specified it to be. And so one thing I'll do is things that go into that carry-out. I don't do them all the time. I just put them into shared storage because I've purchased enough shared storage where I have that buffer. And then every once in a while I'll come through, check that auto button and then just start pulling stuff in, right? But I happen to also know that this carry-all over here, the middle one is crafting tiers 1 through 6. So copper all the way up to Khazad Skarn. And then the next one is tier 7 plus, which at the moment on Treebeard is just Kalinard and Rittermark. And I may need to adjust that at some point, but for right now it works very well. And so what I do is the carry-alls related to that go into this bucket. Amber says, I know I've asked this before, but where do you upload your streams as videos? Do you have a link? Yeah, I probably do. Let's see. Oh, you know, it's funny. I have a link to the Little Redheads Harvest Festival guides. They're over at Little Redheads Life Beyond the Shire YouTube channel. There you go. So my plugins are over at Little Redhead's YouTube channel, which you can find there, youtube.com/@lifebeyondtheshire. And there is a playlist there called Plugins. You can look at any of them there. There's not a lot of organization, but they all have the same title as over here and some basic descriptions and links between them. One of these days, perhaps I'll figure out a way to do that better. Yeah. Okay. So that's the first thing I do is I put. I have a consistent place to put a carry-all that contains whatever. So my tailor/metal worker also has a crafting carry-all. Metals are kind of that universal thing that I just have a bucket for metals because different crafters needed it, and it seemed like a general purpose one. But my tailor is a place where I put all the hides, and so the carry-all in my tailor bucket should be just hides and hide-related things, processing. So wax, maybe those crit items, but usually there's room for them over that crit item. And so any hides or processed leathers and any waxes and cloths and anything else you need to build tailoring stuff, that all goes in this carry-all. So that's pretty easy to sort out. My jeweler cook build, there's usually 4 different crafting carry-alls. One of them is just jewels for jewel crafting, so that's the one on the right here. Nope, sorry, that's a different server. I need to sort that out between the different servers. So the one on the left here is all the gems. And so this is just the uncut and the polished gems. They all go into here, and recently, speckled shell fragments of all things. Why not? And so all of the gems go into that one, and then the other 3 are cooking things. So this one is things you pull out of the ground as a farmer. This one is things that you buy from the vendor, and I just don't want to be bothered to go and buy the exact quantities, so I just stock up. Whoa, cups of rye flour, you're in the wrong place. How dare. And the final one is things that you make as ingredients. So you have produced it, but it's not the final product. So your cups of flour and your pie filling and all of that. And so by keeping these the things in them in that same order, I just happen to know if I need some pie filling, well, I'm going to come into my cook's tab in shared storage and pull out that second item and come on in, and here's all the pie fillings that I could want. Cool. Same thing with my Scholar Weaponsmith. The carry-alls in here, one of them is going to be all my dye components and dye-related things, I think. And the other one's going to be all the Scholar mats that I happen to have. Now, Little Redhead has all of my Scholar mats, so this is more of a plan for the future kind of thing. But one day I will be collecting Scholar mats, and one of them go in there. Again, the carry-alls were on sale one day, and I was like, what, 1 week? And I was like, oh, I'm going to want those eventually. And then, what do we have? Bearmer is my woodworker, so any woods that I have to process are in here. And I've got a few others, but those are the main ones, right? And so I guess the first thing is if you can have an organized way to put them into shared storage when you're not actively using them. Oh, where are my task carryalls? Oh my goodness, those are somewhere. They're on a different character right now. I also have task carryalls, but those are a lot easier to sort out. So my recommendation is keep them in shared storage unless you're actively using them. When you are actively using them, you're either using them because you have stuff that you want to go in them, in which case you can just pull them out one at a time and use that auto collect and then put them back. So that you're trying to put stuff in there, or you're trying to use them for crafting. And usually if you're using them for crafting, like, oh, I need to cook some stuff. Cool, you just need to pull out the ones that are cook related. So in this case, I would pull out, numbers 2, 3, and 4 from my cook and put them there. The worst case scenario is for my jewel crafter who needs metals. So pull out the metals and also possibly crit items and also gems. And so if you're pulling them out, just have a regular way to differentiate between them so you don't need to even have them named because the 3 on the left, those are the metals. The one on the right, that's my gems. And so when you're using them, okay, cool, yeah, that is gems, but I didn't need to open it to know that, right? Where it was in my bag was enough to tell me what it is. And then when you're done with whatever crafting, just kind of be conscientious about cleaning up, just like you would, hopefully, in the real world, cleaning up your workspace. Hey, I've got the gems thing, put that back here. Cool, I'm done with the metal thing, put those back here. And so I find using a scheme like this makes it better. Like, do I still wish I could change the color of some of these things or change the names of them? I do, but that's not on the near-term horizon. That's not something that SSG is planning on working on. They've mentioned recently on one of the, I think when Severlin was last on with Cordovan, so a couple of weeks ago, they were talking about some of the technical or technological issues that stand in the way of them offering a feature like that. So I wouldn't hold out too much hope that gets addressed in the near future. So in the short term, I recommend adapting some kind of scheme like this, where if you have a bunch of carryalls and you can afford to, again, this is a luxury, right? Hello, Raiders from Deep Swan. We're just talking carryalls in Lord of the Rings Online. So if you have enough carryalls where you are really looking for, I would like to name them. First thing, if you have enough carryalls where you can split their concerns across, this is obviously there's more carryalls than the average person would probably have, right? And so you might not be able to kind of divide your purposes. These are just my cooking ones, and these are just my scholar ones. But if you can do that, and you can name your shared storage tabs accordingly, it makes it a lot easier to find the specific ones that you're looking for. If you can't, I totally get it. I've used one carryall for multiple crafts in the past, but it's a very nice to have if you have those LOTRO points to spare. Getting a couple extra crafting carryalls to kind of split concerns out so that all of your metals are in one place and nothing but metals are there, much easier. Or Diddy says, "Hi, little redhead." She's walking around in the background. So if you can do that, it makes life easier. I'll just squeeze up to just the ones that I really use. Try to have a sense of what goes in a carryall. Try to make use of the ability to name your shared storage tabs as a proxy for naming your crafting carryalls. And then try not to have more crafting carryalls in your inventory than what you need for the task at hand. And then remember to put them back kind of up on the shelf, put them back where they came from so that you don't have to sort that out. And I find when I'm doing that, it's pretty programmatic for me, pretty muscle memory to pull things out and put them back. And rarely do I find myself asking, what is in this crafting carryall? What's in here? Now, I think the worst one is probably the cook one, because there's 4 different carryalls for the 1 jewel and the 3 cook, and that's probably the easiest for me to mess up. But if you've only got a couple of carryalls in a bucket, I find my desire to be able to rename them or even recolor them has just kind of faded off as I incorporate this other plan to sort them. So, sorry that there is not currently a solution for plugins to do that. You can use the Prime Bags plugin, and let's go ahead and get that installed actually just for to take a look. So I'm going to go to the LOTRO Plugin Compendium, and this is a third-party program that you can download to, there we go, to assist with the installation of plugins. There's linked there in chat as well. You can get it at lotrointerface.com. And if I go ahead and say I want Prime, go ahead and click it, click Add, and we are done. Great. Remember, when you've added a plugin, you do need to hit this green arrow to refresh. LOTRO is not keeping an eye on that plugins directory, so you have to tell it to go take another look. And specifically, Prime, it comes with a whole cluster of different add-ons, and right now I'm just looking at Prime Bags. When you load it, it's going to replace your bag interface with a different one, and this is one where you can name your own little sub-bags. So if I wanted to do that, I could come in and I could make a new one, new category, and this is just carry-alls. Awesome. So by default, it just is going to throw that into a miscellaneous, but if I click on carry-alls and say I want to edit this, click that. Oh, that's the wrong one. Ha. Large craft and carry-all, awesome. When you close the settings, Prime Bag will just reload itself. And so I don't know that this is better, but it will definitely separate out your carry-alls from everything else in your inventory. And maybe that's useful. Maybe it's useful to be able to bucketize and say, any carry-alls I have, they're in their own place and not intermixed with everything else. I really like Prime Bags because I can tell it what things I want to go where. So all those things that I'm giving to an alt, I can just tell it, hey, put those in a bucket named Schildwacht, and then when I'm at the end of a session play, I can just drag everything from my Schildwacht bucket into the shared storage and be done with it. Unfortunately, Prime Bags also cannot tell the difference between different carry-alls, and so it doesn't really solve the problem, but it at least can see that they are carry-alls and put them into a place. Lord Zach says, I don't really like that. How can you see how many bag slots left? Actually, I don't even use my bag to see how many slots are left. I normally use Titan bar. So let's go ahead and pull that up. So Titan bar, add. Awesome. So we're going to reload. Load in Titan bar. And so Titan bar, if I go ahead and go into, oh my goodness, it's been a while since I've had to set this up. Oh, it's over here. Haha. So one of the things I like to do with the backpack, okay, show total bag slots, awesome. Show used over free, nope. Awesome. So I don't care how many total I have. It hasn't changed in a while because I have 135. Your total bag count isn't going to change very often. So I don't care about the total. And it will either offer you to show how many you have used or how many you have free. I want to know how many I have free, and I'm done. So this is my Titan bar default view for bag. I have a bunch of other stuff on there normally, but I can just see when I look up there, I've got 119. This icon turns redder and scarier the more full your inventory gets. But you can see that over here as well, I think. Maybe not. Oh yeah, here it is. Empty slots, 119. So above your empty slots thing, and if you want to break stuff into pieces, you can. And you can see empty slots, 118. So Prime Bags also has a very nice button that is half overlapped with the title bar, but you can click it to combine like stacks together. So that stack I just broke. In fact, let's do a couple more. That, and this, and that. So Prime Bags will attempt to reconstitute everything together into a single stack or multiple stacks if you have too many of them. And so we can see that's really useful for my workflow because I play a lot with Little Redhead. And so I have a lot more shared storage available because I don't save as many things as she does, and I have more carry-alls, and so at the end of a play session, she tends to hand me a bunch of stacks of things. And we were playing together, so we usually have a lot of overlap between the loot that was dropped, scroll cases and medals and all that. So it's really nice to have a button that just says combine everything together, and then I can start putting them into shared storage. So that being said, yeah, absolutely. That's not for everyone, but I find I don't need a visual representation of how many empty spaces I have. When I have Titan Bar giving me a number, you've got 7, you've got 100. And also Prime Bags itself has a little notation of how many empty spaces do you have left. But that empty space, it collapses all of that down into a single empty space square, which I find useful because the utility of all of this is a visual representation of how much empty space you have, but it's not the only way to represent that. And if you get rid of all that, the amount of space it takes to show your inventory is suddenly a lot less. Little Redhead, how could you throw away Gandalf's thanks? Yeah, well, you find a way. So, all that being said, thanks, Lord Yeti, for asking. It's a great question. Can plugins solve that issue of naming carry-alls? And the answer is no. Plugins by themselves can't do that. Like I said, one could write a plugin where you drag a carry-all onto it, and then you could tell that plugin when you receive this in the future, this is the name I want you to tell me, and then you could just drag carry-alls onto there, and it would tell you what name you attach to that thing, I think. But that's about it. So it'd be a thing that is maybe possible. But like I said, 9 times out of 10, I don't even need that information anymore. If you're in that fortunate situation where you can spend a few extra LOTRO points and separate out your concerns for your carry-alls, it really does make life a lot easier. Okay, great question. Little Redhead, goat poop only comes along once, you know. Lord Zack says, I thought goat poop was bind on character. And that, that doesn't stop you from putting it in your shared storage. In fact, there's a whole button down here, hide items bound to other characters for a reason. Awesome. So, let's go ahead and close the LOTRO plugin compendium here. And let's see. Cool. So what we want to work on right now, Hytbold, is bringing Hytbold back up because I unloaded it. There we go. So currently Hytbold Assistant does not have an icon, so you just type /Hytbold and it opens the window. That's probably something I'll work on before releasing this Hytbold 2. There's talk in chat about gold, and Little Redhead points out that after a certain point, how much in-game gold you have stops becoming a real issue, especially if you use the subscriber town service subscriber benefits, which means you stop taking item damage. And so the main thing that we spend in-game money on is just swift travel stable masters. And the occasional 30 silver here, 50 silver there just doesn't make a huge dent. And so the auction house is the other big place where we can then afford to splurge. Now, the game will only show you how much in-game currency you have on this character, 42 gold. Plugins like Titan Bar will be able to keep track of that on every character that you log into, so it can show you statistics for everyone. Alt Inventory might also do that. I mean, obviously it could do that. I don't know if it does. But I have found it very useful to convert a lot of that in-game currency into bags of gold coins that I can stick into shared storage, because that way I have 890 gold in that 89 stacks of 10 golds each that I can just peel off and just put onto a character and immediately sell if that character needs money. And that's a lot easier than being like, oh, I wonder which one of my characters has money today. And so I'll use a Titan bar to kind of say, oh, a bunch of my characters have more than 10 gold on them. Next time I'm doing ingredient crates, I'll just run into the local vault in town and convert down into coins and put those into shared storage. And that way, if I'm on an alt who really doesn't get much play, they've only got 5 gold and they want to go do something that costs 50 gold, no worries. Just pull 10 of those out of storage, or 5 of them in this case. Pull 5 of them out, go use my subscriber time and services to go to, and then immediately convert that into 50 gold. Now, you can't undo that without going to a vault person and then buying those coins. And it's 1-to-1. It's lossless. You're not giving up any in-game money to do this, and so it's a really nice way to make your money more portable. Aaron Bird said, I was wondering what those bags of coins were for, and Lord Zach also points out that free-to-play, for a long time, had a 2 gold max. They may have removed that cap completely, or at least bumped it up for free-to-play players. I don't know if the Redhead will point out an answer in my ear. But for a long time, free-to-play accounts had a maximum gold amount of 2 gold. So it was very easy to bump up against that. But it had the practical thing of saying you can't actually spend more than 2 gold on a thing. So there was a limit to how much you could expand your storage, for instance. And you might not be able to buy houses. But you could accumulate more than that by simply buying one of those things that's worth 1 gold, sticking it into wherever, storage maybe. And then every time you get more than 1 gold, you buy down, and you could accumulate more than 2 gold's worth, but you can never use more than 2 golds at a time. Lord Zach steals reputation items from before his bank. Well, I mean, you pick up them, but it's like, oh, an alt needs to come and use them. I've got a spreadsheet that I'm trying to build up about all my alt's status on reputation. There's probably a plugin that handles all of that. But like, who gets my Dowerhand crest next, kind of thing. And but then you have to just remember, oh, it's time to do that. And with a shared storage that still has like 60 spaces before I even get cramped, it's like, it's not a high priority. Okay, yeah. So that's another thing I highly recommend. If you have a lot of money, but you also have a lot of alts, just consider spending down some of that for some of these bags of gold coins. They're 10 gold each. Stick them into shared storage. You won't be like, oh, I'm going to splurge 500 at the auction house without really meaning it. And B, if you do want to, it's super easy to do it. Okay, awesome. Lord Zach thinks that the required quests made reputation items less useful. I hear what you're saying. I think from a lore perspective, it makes more sense, and it's a little less lore-breaking now. Like the Lost of the Forkel, for instance, notoriously suspicious of outsiders, and the fact that you could walk up to them and the very first Lost of the Forkel person that you encounter could be like, oh, you're our favorite person. We've never met you before, but you're kindred. You're blood brothers with us. That's just not very accurate from an in-game lore perspective, right? Like, fun to do as an alt, but the fact that you now have to do the bare minimum of interaction with the Lost of the Forkel before they will call you kindred with them, I don't feel like that's too much to ask. The introductory quests that you have to do with each of the factions for the low-level and the high-level versions of their tokens, just, it's 5 minutes of in-game time, well, of real-world time, I should say, to do the thing. And it at least justifies why these people might now consider you a blood brother kindred type person, even though you've spent like 10 minutes in their village. Lord Zach says, I like how you talk about lore when they probably did this so people just don't get easy LOTRO points. That may have been a reason to do it, but I think it's better from a lore perspective. And LOTRO does lore so well. LOTRO respects the world of Middle-earth so well that I feel like even if that were a change designed to slow down reputation gains a little bit, the reality is if you're over level, over here on Treebeard we have a level cap of 85. So if you're level 85 and you want to go get Kindred with Losoth of Vorachel and you have all the reputation items to do it, the amount of time it takes you to go work through those 2 quests, really getting to Vorachel might be the longest time, right? If you haven't been there and you don't want to spend the Mithril coins, riding up from Osfelrode to Vorachel could be the longest amount of time, because the quests do not take that long. And so the 5 minutes of doing the quests, plus the 10 minutes of riding up to Vorachel, and you're done, right? And at that point, you can consume all the things. And that's true with each of the factions, right? Like, I have a bunch of Iron Garrison of tokens here. Oh, actually, Dowerhand is Thorn's Hall. Fascinating. I had a bunch of... Oh, here they are. Iron Garrison Guards and Miners tokens, right? And so all of my alts who have reached level 45, they've been into Moria because they want their legendary items. And the effort it takes to get into the Dolphin View, to get the 2 quests... Are they both in the Dolphin View? Well, one of them is. The effort it takes to go to the Dolphin View, clear the path, come back, turn it in, and now you can use those tokens. It's just not that much. And if it is that much, maybe the Iron Garrison shouldn't be that respectful of you, right? Anyway, so yes, there may have been monetization or commercial aspects at play, but the reality is I think the improvement in lore actually balances that out for me. Apparently, I'm at max rec with most of those factions. Good job, Skillbox. So, yeah, I can't speak to the motivations of that change, but I can speak to my personal interaction with it, which is pretty favorable on the most part. Okay, cool. So, let's talk about an image carousel. So, for the purposes of this, what I would like to do is have a carousel that has the built-in idea of the left arrow, the right arrow, and a number of images to flip between. Now, for the dress-up, that's always going to be 3. But I think it would be useful to be able to accommodate fewer or more as a general purpose thing. Like, this could be its own little library control. So just thinking about that, I'd like to assume that they're going to pass in N images. And for Hytbold specifically, I think it'd be very nice to be able to have text associated with each image. So that we can call out, this is the Balladeer, this is the, I can't remember the other 2 types of them. Someone was very kind and sent me, who was that? Anatholis sent me a link to a very detailed write-up of the Hytbold Daily Quest dress-up. A dress-up overview. I'm going to put that link in the chat there. And what do we have? Balladeer, Regal, and Winter. That's what the other 2 were. Oh, Literate did point out in chat that all accounts types currently have a cap of 9,999 gold per character, which is funny because most of your currencies do list caps in your wallet. And so 205 out of 500, 24 out of 1,000. So the fact that our hero marks... Ooh, hero marks are account-wide. Fascinating. So the fact that the gold, like, it's probably a UI thing, like, this slash out of 9999999 would just be ugly. But that's fascinating. So, yes. Each character might be able to hold 9,999, but you can hold more than that in shared storage. Though why you would feel the need to, I'm not sure. On some of the... So a lot of MMO economies, and LOTRO is no exception, are inflationary. That is, there's not a lot of gold in the system when a server first starts, and the longer a server lasts, the more gold just kind of accumulates in the hands of players. And it's fine. That's not inherently a bad thing. But it's the nature of a system where the millionth task item drop from an orc, this shattered dagger or whatever, the millionth one you sell to a vendor is equally as valuable as the first one that got sold to a vendor, right? So there's this unending stream of money that goes into the hands of players from quest rewards and loots things that they sell. And so the economy is inherently inflationary, and that can be nice for new characters. Because one of the things that you'll have is established accounts, established players who are doing a new character, like, oh, I'm going to make a new character and be a scholar, and I want to buy scholar mats. And they have a bunch of money that they can spend at the auction house. So your stack of tier 1 scholar materials that you put up for 5 gold could sell on a more established server, whereas on an early server, no one has 5 gold to spend. And so it's a way, new players can use that to their advantage. If they're willing to part with the thing and put it up in the auction house, they can get some of those exorbitant prices and flow that money into their less established account. And a lot of us players like to see the numbers go up. So if my account now has 2,000 gold instead of 1,000, hey, that's a bigger number. So why not? Anyway, so a lot of MMO economies are inflationary, and LOTRO's is as well. And so it's pretty normal to see established server auction house prices be higher than seem normal. Like, oh, I would like to buy that thing. Oh, it costs 53 gold. And to a new account, that seems like a ridiculously high amount. And to an established account, that's fine. Why not? I've got 5,000 money. Why not spend 50 of it on a fun-to-have thing? I wonder how, if anyone's put up any like cosmetic pets. Yeah, so we can see over here, oh, I don't know some of them. Sort by usable. It's Tome of the Snowy Mountain Eagle. Where's that come from? So, need Tome of the Snowy Mountain Eagle. Available to barter with the Karum Ubnar. Okay, well, I'll be able to get that eventually. And the Tome of the Cart Pony. Also with the Karum Ubnar. Ironbard says, is that why the coffers with the draft horses was 10,000 LOTRO points? I think that was the price it was for a number of reasons. The first is that you got a lot of account-wide things with that coffer. If I remember correctly, that's the one where every one of your characters gets that huge stable yard item, which can be used both inside and outside of your house to some really interesting effects. A new kin member over here on Treebeard has a hobbit hole that they have placed that stable on top of. And so when you walk up to the hobbit hole, it is kind of hidden within the structure of the stable, and the stable is built into the side of the yard. Totally transforms the look of their hobbit. Like, you don't even tell it's a hobbit hole anymore. It's like, oh, there's a stable in the yard, and you walk into the stable, and then there's a round door, and you walk into the house. And so they also use it to really nice effect in one of the elven houses to actually loft their main room with some Gondorian stairs. You walk up the Gondorian stairs and you get to the top level of this stable that's been planted inside of their house. So you get one of those with every character. You get these draft horse cosmetics and mounts with every character. You get that dressage emote with every character. Like, things that apply to every character on every server tend to come at a little bit of a premium compared to things that are just a one-off on one character. And that may not be very fair if you're the kind of person who only plays a single character on a single server, because at that point it's all the same either way. But a lot of us have multiple characters. Over here on Treebeard, I've got something like 14 characters. I don't play most of them most of the time, though I do use them for universal ingredient packs because it's so useful. But I don't use most of them most of the time. They're mostly just there for me to get the deeds over here on landscape difficulty. Aaron Bard says, do I have a guess why they only ran it for such a short time? No. The mysteries of monetization are lost on me. But I suspect there's a certain amount of, it's an interesting thing. They're looking for to try it out to see if people want it. But if you have a definitive start and time for it, maybe you get a little bit more pickup than if you can do this forever. I don't know. It's the same mysteries behind why carry-alls were not available permanently in the LOTRO store for such a long time. It boggled my mind, but it made sense to someone who spends a lot more time thinking about these things and knowing about these things than I ever will. So I have no insight into the mysteries of the monetization squad, or whatever that team is called. The people at SSG responsible for actually making sure that they have money to turn the lights on. Little Redhead hypothesizes that FOMO, fear of missing out, might have be likely to drive a few more sales to that thing. Okay, so both of the tomes that are available are going to be available to me via barter, so I'm not too worried about it. But we can see 15 gold, I could just have them. I wouldn't have to spend any barter tokens with that faction. I could just have it and it's mine. And on a server where I've got about 1,000 gold between each of my characters, 15 gold's not that much. But if you're a brand new character, 15 gold is just not a reasonable amount to spend on a cosmetic pet. Pomelo says, Monetization Squad sounds like a good name to me. Embert says, sadly, fear of missing out worked backwards for me in this case. Wasn't sure what it was, so put it on an alt and didn't get a chance to grab it for your main account. Aw, that is sad. Little Redhead says, Monetization Squad is my capitalism-themed band name. Lord Zach thinks if they run it for 2 months, some people will be like, oh, next paycheck, and then they'll forget about it. China in chat says, hey, big fan of Lord of the Rings here and new to MMOs. Would you recommend this game? I would recommend this game to someone who likes MMOs and to someone who likes Lord of the Rings and either likes MMOs or is new to MMOs. So, one of the things I really like, I do not need to stand here right now. I'm going to grab a quick little snipper of the dressed up model. So, one of the things I think is really neat, and I've become desensitized a little bit because I've been able to do it so much. But we're going to go ahead and... So one of the things I really enjoy is the ability to step into the world of Middle-earth. And it is executed very well here in Lord of the Rings Online. So one of the things that's delightful is to be able to kind of stroll around the Shire. And the Shire is a fully developed setting, most of the Shire is a fully developed setting here in Lord of the Rings Online, where you can just kind of pick out things that relate specifically to passages in the books. So we're going to come on over here to the Shire, and let's go to the party tree. So party tree, as described in Lord of the Rings, is just below Bag End. So I'm going to run up the hill here. In fact, I'm going to get out of mount, do it a little bit faster. So being able to run around in a world that's been constructed from Lord of the Rings is just delightful, especially some of the less grim places, and the Shire is certainly one of them. So we're up here in just outside Bag End, which has been taken over by Lobelia Sackville Baggins, and Lotho's sitting there over on the porch as well. But Bag End is realized fully in the exterior here, and you can also go in and wander around inside. And you can glance down the hill here at the tree, and at the farm fields and various things below. The Bywater is Hobbiton Bywater is down there. You've got the river separating Bag End up here from Hobbiton Bywater down there, and beyond, much of the Shire laid out before us. And it just really neat. There's a whole bunch of quests that are just about exploring the Shire with some stuff on them. So you can deliver the mail from various cities to various cities in the Shire. You can run around picking up spoiled pies. The Shire is delightful. And if you're a person who really wants to experience one vision of the Shire, I think Lord of the Rings Online has done a great job of evoking that pastoral sense of it. And they've done a great job with so many of other regions where you're like, oh, cool. This really does feel like the Trollshaws as I'm finding the hidden road into Rivendell and all of that. You know, it's been a while since I've been inside a Bag End. Excuse me, Lobelia. Now, the one thing about this is I feel like the description from The Hobbit describes kind of a curving path along the other side of the hill, and this is more of a straight path. That's okay. So, the ones on the left should have the windows because they look out over... Awesome. One on the right should be built into the hillside, so they should not have windows. Excellent. So we've got that at least. So, Jenna, in chat, hopefully that was a reasonable answer. MMOs have certain things about them that a lot of people expect. For instance, the ability to quickly kind of teleport or swift travel between one region and another. Lord of the Rings Online has these things. So there's definitely some suspension of immersion and disbelief when it comes to some of the MMO trappings that are laid on top of the setting of Middle-earth. And there's a question, is it free-to-play friendly? Yes. The answer is very much yes. A lot of the content that is part of the core story of, in-game it's called the Epic Books, but there's a set of core quests that kind of follow in parallel to the quest of the Ring. You're not a part of the Fellowship, but you might be working in tandem with them or behind or ahead of them in the storyline. And you can run from level 1 through 90-ish, I think. You can get into Gondor before you start running into content that's not available for free-to-play players without spending in-game currency to buy it. In-game, you can earn what's called LOTRO points by completing deeds. And there's a lot of different deeds that you can do, but in general, every region that you explore has some explorer deeds. Find interesting landmarks. For instance, here in the Shire, you can visit the 6 farms of the Shire that are really important. Dora Brownlocks and Bamfurlong and Old Odo's Leaf Farm. If you do all of those, you will get 5 LOTRO points. Cool. There might be a few hundred LOTRO points available in a particular region, and a quest pack, extra content that doesn't come just from a free-to-play account, might run 1,000 LOTRO points or something. People in chat might know better than I do. I haven't actually bought one of those. Let's see. Loretta says, "I love how casual you are about going to the party tree." Well, the party tree is awesome. You should go to it. Lord Zach, no wonder Bilbo hated people. The party tree is outside his house. You know, I like to think of it as kind of some of the modern designs for some highways. Like, it's down there, and we're up here. So a lot of the sound's just going to bounce off the hill and head toward Hobbiton Bywater. So really, it's the people over in the... Oh, which inn is it? What's down there? Points of interest. Oh, it's not showing me. Green Dragon? No, that's in Bywater. Ivy Bush. Thank you, Aaron Bard. So really, it's the people in the Ivy Bush who are going to get a lot of this reflected sound off of the hill over there. So, you know, for sound to get up and over into Bilbo's front door, that actually seems to me less likely. Like, you'll hear a little bit of it. You'll hear some of it, but most of it's just going to get reflected off here, right over there to Hobbiton and to Tuckborough beyond. Yes, Little Redhead says there are nice touches here and there, like the fox that seizes the hobbit says they're leaving the Shire is there. Yes, absolutely. Aaron Bard asked where that is. Aaron Brad likes the wagon instant at the one gate in Bree. Yeah, Lord Zach points out you can get LOTRO points by doing in-game activities. You can also spend real money to get LOTRO points, but it is possible. Let me go ahead and install the deed tracker plugin here. I will have to actually run the correct program in order to get that. So I'm going to come in and add the deed tracker plugin by B4. It's me. Okay. And whenever we install a plugin, we're going to come on in and hit the green circle to refresh, load that up. And so the reason why I pulled this up is it gives a nice summary of how many LOTRO points are available in each region of the game. So we can see in the Shire there's 155 LOTRO points that can be acquired through various steeds. In Era de Luin, the Blue Mountains, where you will start if you are a dwarf or an elf, you can get 185, although that is including the higher level area of Sarnar. So that's a little bit of a misnomer there. Breeland 300, but again that includes the higher level area of the Wildwood. Swanfield and Cardelon another 200. Lonelands 180. So we can see in total this character has 13,000 LOTRO points available to them over the life of playing, and that's every character can earn these independent of the other. Oh, thanks, Lord Zach. Depending on quest packs, it's between 495 and 1995 LOTRO points. Awesome. So if you manage to squeeze out every LOTRO point available to this character and spend them all on 1995 things, you could get 6.5 of them. But the more realistic thing is a lot of these lower level LOTRO points here in Eriador, for instance, are a lot more easy to get than some of the ones in Gondor where you have to be level 100 plus to even start there. Oh, awesome. Lord Zach has posted a link to the LOTRO Wiki for the LOTRO Store quest pack. Thank you so much. So I would say for any given character, there's a good 1,000 LOTRO points kind of easily available through some of the lower level content. And there are some people who have more time than money who will make a character, run through all the easy LOTRO points that they want to run through, delete the character, make a new one, do it again. That's totally viable. And if you're looking to buy a quest pack for 500 or 1,000 LOTRO points, that's one character's worth of LOTRO point getting. It's not the way I prefer to play it myself. I have less time and maybe a little bit more money, so I tend to go the other direction. But there's more than one way to do it. Having a little disposable income is nice. Okay, so here in the Shire, we're going to look at the Hytbold quest. So we're making a image carousel control. And I was thinking it would be nice to have optional text associated with each of these. And so I'd already kind of spec'd out what this would look like, where we would be taking a table of images and how many should be visible, and maybe some maximum widths and heights, so that the control doesn't grow too large. And oh yeah, which image should be in the leftmost visible position. And we'll have some sensible default behavior for any of these that are not supplied if they're just nil. But I was thinking that it would be nice to have image equals and then also text equals Okay. So that'll give us a way to pass into this control what text should be shown underneath the image, if any. The redhead thinks the ivy bush is for the older generation, the green dragon is for Sam and such. Perhaps so. But Mela likes that idea. I think in a world that is modeled off of a country that has a lot of pubs and a tradition of having a local pub, you would definitely see sort of a fractionalization where some people just tend to prefer a pub, not only based on its location, but also who else is preferring it and going there. And you'll definitely have some self-selection happening. I feel like we have the same thing, but with board gaming communities. Oh, you're going to that one over there? Maybe I will too. Oh, so-and-so's going to that one? Maybe I won't go to that one. Oh, that one's so far away, but the time and the date's really good. China in chat says, what time in Lord of the Rings does this take place? In Lord of the Rings Online, where you are changes what time it is in a way. So when you are in the Shire, Frodo has just left his home in Buckland. Anyway, it's escaping me right now. So as you follow the epic storyline through early parts of the game, Shire and Breeland, Frodo has left. When you get to Bree Town, Frodo has just gotten there. Aragorn is still there, but he leaves during the course of the epic. He leaves Breeland before you do. I remember to ask Crick Hollow. I guess it's possible. Yeah, let me see. I feel like that's not it. Frodo home Buckland. Yep, I guess it is Crick Hollow. Cool, thank you. It's so funny. I so hear the name of a server that I forget where it's related to in game. So yeah, when you get to Rivendell, the company is assembling in Rivendell. So Aragorn and Boromir and Gimli and Legolas and Gandalf, they are all present in Rivendell. So in Lord of the Rings Online, and this is true with a lot of MMOs, space travel is time travel. When you go to Rivendell, you are at the point of time where the Fellowship is there. When you go to Breetown, you are at the point in time when Aragorn is either there with Frodo or they've just left and you're doing some cleaning up activities after they've left. When you get to Osgiliath in the Lone Lands, or really Weathertop, when you get to Weathertop, Gandalf was there recently. When you get to Gondor, when you get to Minas Tirith, Gandalf is there and Aragorn is on the way or has just arrived. When you're traveling through Western and Eastern Gondor, you're aiding the path of Aragorn, either behind him or ahead of him as he's making his way across the countryside. So space travel is time travel. What time it is in the game depends on where you are and where you are in the story, because the story moves and time passes as you move through the world. But because it's also an MMO, you can move backwards and forwards through the world. As we can see, I'm here in the Shire right now, so you can kind of slide backward and forward throughout the story, throughout when it is as well. And that's kind of a normal thing in MMOs. You know, that's sort of the conceit that we give it. And you could throw a little wrapping on top of it, like, you know, we're telling a story, and we're just like, oh, no, that's not what happened. Remember that time when we were just standing outside of Bag End and looking down at the tree for hours on end? You know, that kind of a conceit of storytelling. But really, it's just because in order for an MMO to work, you have to be able to move from one place to another. The story has to progress, but you also have to allow characters to go back to an older location. So, what time does it take place? When you start the game, Aragorn has not met up with Frodo yet, but is about to, if you're a hobbit or a human character. And as you progress, they leave, they get to Rivendell, they go off to Moria. By the time you get to Moria, they have already left Moria. And other dwarves are starting to come into Moria to try to reclaim it. By the time, when you get to Lothlorien, however, the Fellowship is there. Not to put too many spoilers on things, but as you proceed down the Great River, you're in their trail again. They've moved on ahead of you. By the time you get to the Fall of Rauros, they've already done their thing. So you're kind of piecing together what happened from hints and clues. But at that point, there's already been scattering, and the epic storyline follows one of those branches. And so the epic storyline in game is kind of woven around these things, and it takes a lot of clues from in the book. So when the Fellowship is forming in Rivendell, when Frodo is recovering, there's talk of riders going out, seeking signs of the Black Riders, seeking news from afar. Well, guess what? You're one of those, and you're going to be seeking signs of Black Riders throughout the Trollshaws. That kind of thing. In fact, there's a whole separate continuing adventures series, a little mini expansion with the twin sons of Elrond, Elrohir and Elladan, where you go off in search of Black Riders in both the Trollshaws and further south in Eregion. And so there's a whole little side adventure that you can do that, which apparently is a really nice way to get the Stable Master right outside of Moria. So I gotta think about that for the next alt I have that goes there. So hopefully that kind of answers your question about that. But we follow the whole story of the ring. Not to put too many spoilers on it, but we follow the course of the ring from here in the Shire all the way to Mount Doom. And that is fleshed out in the world, so it's definitely possible to be traveling around Mount Doom in Mordor and beyond. There's story that they explore further north, up in the Arid Mithrin, the Grey Mountains, and in northern Mirkwood, Aaron Lasglin, Lake Town, and Dale. There's more that they've fleshed out beyond the core story of Lord of the Rings with the life cycle of the ring. Uncle Elias says, very well explained. I'd never thought about it before. Yeah, my space travel is time travel theory. I think it's just one of those things where we intuitively understand it, but don't necessarily have words for it. Because it's just, hopefully that's what you're talking about. It's just the nature of video games, right? Like in a book, you're kind of reading left to right. If you're in a Western culture, you're reading from one end to another. And you can go back, but you're intentionally resetting yourself into an earlier point of the story. And with a video game setting for Middle Earth, it's a little subtler than that, right? When you travel from place to place, you're doing the same thing. You're going to that earlier or later part in the book, but it's a little less physical, right? Like you're just clicking, it's like I'm going to go to Breetown, but it's not as explicitly I'm going to go to page 47. But that's kind of the nature of it. You're just going back and forth through a book. Just a book that you happen to have a character in, that you're running around in. Awesome. Okay. So, we had the idea of an image carousel control, and we had a place that we were drawing things in the Hytbold Quest UI. And so what I'd like to do is come on into the quest win. And for those things that we were making here, load quest dress up, we want to go ahead and hoist out that carousel creation into the image carousel control. Now, we have already some changes from last week. Let's go ahead and review those before we go too far. There, we had a VS Code file. I'm going to get rid of that for right now. Okay, so we had some basic dress-up images. I'm just going to go ahead and add them. We're going to go ahead and fix them later. Okay, do file updates. Images. Okay. Added arrow button images and starting dress up images. Okay, so last time we just took a quick snapshot and used an arrow that we created. This time I've gone ahead and grabbed the in-game assets for those arrows, and that's useful for both a skinning perspective and it just looks nicer and it's easier to do. Now, in game, in a lot of different UIs, in fact, buttons that you can click have 3 different states. There's the normal state, where in this case it's just a light blue. There's a hover over state to show that your mouse cursor is over it and it could be interacted with. So in this case it gets lighter. And then there's the pressed, which in this case it gets darker. So you have sort of a medium blue, a light blue, and a dark blue. And the way those interact, like what happens if you click and hold and move the cursor off and then release, all of these things are pretty easy to kind of see what happens and then put into logic for our own button. And so I separate out those rules into what I was calling a reactive button, but we could probably just extract that out into a subclass of our own, where we could just make a button of that class instead of having to do all that of ourselves. Brexit says, "This is really fascinating. Thanks for sharing this." You're welcome. You work in SQL and Python at work to develop reports and apps, but this is a whole new level. Yeah, this is the whole thing. Now, if you ever work with UI frameworks in the real world, I do a lot of C#, and so, but I have done C++, I've done other things. If you have a UI framework, a lot of those same concepts are probably going to be available. You can make windows, you can make buttons, you can make labels, images, all of these things happen. It's just how you do it, how you ask the game to do things. It just has its own little quirks and peculiarities. Okay, so I had all this logic for making what I was calling a reactive button. We want to hoist that out as well. In fact, let's go ahead and first make some commits here. So we're just using a Git repository. This is the fork tool on top of that. You can get that at fork.dev. It's ridiculously annoying to search for. But fork.dev, actually I say it's annoying to search for. Let's do a little experiment. Incognito window, fork git. Oops. Fork git. Well, that's git.fork. Okay, fork.dev is on the first page, at least. If I search for fork git download, git-fork. Is that the same thing? Okay, it looks like it is. Fork.dev. Okay, so git-fork.com also works, apparently. It's a free tool, and it works pretty well. I'm very used to it. And we're going to go ahead and commit some of these changes. Initial tests of Quest UI. Okay, and then added image carousel file. China says, what's the code scripts for? I think you're asking what we're doing with all this code. And the answer is the thing that we're working on is writing plugins or changing plugins. And so I am writing code to adjust how this plugin works. Now you can play Lord of the Rings Online without any plugins or add-ons as they're called in some other game, in other games. You can certainly play it without any at all. But if you do like modifying the game behavior, look and feel in some way, then there's a lot of plugins out there. Hytbold Assistant is a very niche plugin, and the quest that I'm adding to it is a very niche quest of that. It's one of 49 quests that you can do when you're rebuilding Hytbold, an area of Eastern Rohan. Aaron Bard says, also called mods. Yeah, the one thing to be careful of is that there's some imprecise language where people will also refer to the UI's skins. Where are skins? user skins, they might also refer to those as mods. So it's just important to kind of clarify when people are asking, oh, where can I find a thing to do whatever? They might be talking about a skin, which changes the look of the game, or a plugin, which can change either some behavior or add new features to the game. Both skins and plugins, I would say, mod the game in some way or modify the game in some way. And so that's why it can be just useful to be aware. And a lot of times people say, oh, is there a plugin to do something to which plugins can't do but skins can do? So the answer might be, there is a thing that will do the thing that you're talking about. It's just not a plugin, it's a skin. So it's kind of a fine distinction, and it's, it doesn't really matter. Like, it's not like, aha, you were wrong about the term. It's just, it can be helpful to keep in mind that some people will not make a distinction between plugins and skins, and that's fine, right up until the point where it's time to tell them how to do the thing. Because if you want to change a skin, you go to Options, you go to UI Settings, you scroll down to Miscellaneous Current User Skin, and you select what skin that you want. Whereas if you want to load a plugin, you go to the caret menu, you come on up to System, go over to Plugin Manager, and then you have the Plugin Manager, right? Like, two completely different things, and so you can get some very confused people if you try to give them instructions for plugins and they're trying to do a skin, or vice versa. So, China in chat, that's what we're doing on this stream. A lot of people who are streaming Lord of the Rings Online will be streaming about the gameplay, doing something in-game. Whereas this stream, Plugin Along, we spend a lot of time either getting derailed and talking about the game, which is totally fine, or actually working on coding something about a plugin. Okay, so great questions. Thank you. So let's go ahead and make I hate naming things, but we're going to call it a reactive button. So let's go ahead and make a new file, reactive button.lua. Awesome. So we're going to be doing this as a class. And so just as a reminder of how we do that, we're going to go ahead and open up the carousel, which I've already done. And this is going to be a reactive button equals class derived from turbine UI LOTRO.button. Okay, and we want to first define what the constructor would look like. So that's reactive button constructor, and can't use that syntax. And first thing you got to remember to do in here is that we're going to go ahead and call the parent UI LOTRO.button constructor with self. So you've got to, this is handled implicitly in other languages. You have to explicitly dispatch your base class constructor calls here. Okay. So it would be helpful to have a sense of what constructors a button has. Let's come on in to the API here and come on into button and just take a look. How do we make a button? Oh, you don't have constructors defined here, do you? Okay, let's come on in to the documentation that Lunar Waters put together, which is fantastic. And we want to go ahead and have a make arrow button, which goes to reactive button, which is right. We're doing it as a control because we're setting that image. Why would we do a control instead of a button, though? An unskinned button. Or Zach says, is Little Red here? I think the answer is yes. She says in chat, "Hoi." Okay, so we have a button. There's a basic button implementation, but I'm not sure that's better than just looking for the mouse click event from a control. Okay, so that'll be a control. Great. Now, does control have a any parameters? Let's come on in. Okay, the answer is it looks like it is a parameterless constructor. Awesome. So we don't need to worry about any overloads, and we do need to make sure that that is the same thing. Okay, great. Lord Zach was wondering what type of meat is popular in your country. Well, I can also answer that. The redhead says, people here in the Netherlands seem to like having social gatherings where they grill sausages, chicken on a skewer, hamburger, stuff like that. I would also say steak is very common, or beef stuck. I would also say an imported shawarma is also very common. Yeah, all the common stuff that you would expect. Cow parts, pig parts, sheep parts, chicken parts, and some of the less common ones as well. Little Redhead points out donor meat. Yep. Brexit says, we make gumbo down here in Louisiana. Gumbo is tasty. Lord Zach says, sheep isn't very big here. I would say I would see lamb more often than, sheep meat that is not lamb meat. Little Redhead thinks there's less beef here than in the U.S. Consumed. That's something I haven't looked into, is the relative proportion of things consumed. I would guess that cheese consumption is higher here in the Netherlands than it is in the United States, I would guess. Okay, I'm going to continue on here. So what we want to do is we want a reactive button that this is going to be what I haven't done. Okay, we want to go ahead and a reactive button is just going to do the image stuff, but it's not going to be doing anything else, like what size, what position, and all that. And so what we want to do is have these mouse enter, mouse down, mouse up, and mouse leave overloads here. So let's take a look at incorporating those. And so each place where we have a button, we're going to replace that with self. Awesome. Images, we need that. And so let's go ahead and start adding a thing, parameters. I'm going to go ahead and pull out this syntax. Using this syntax will let the IntelliSense know what's going on, and that's probably happening using the Lua extension. I'd have to check with LunarWater on that. They know much more about this than I do. Okay, so constructs a new reactive button, which handles changing images when for rollover or click. Okay. So parameter images, a table with each image. And that's going to be normal equals ... We also want one for rollover equals ... And finally, there's a clicked equals ... Okay. And, I already have a terminology difference between clicked and pressed. That's great. But since in the class we have mouse down, which is fired when this is pressed. All right. So click, we're going to do pressed because clicked has a different connotation. Just rollover or pressed. Okay, is clicked. Cool. I have an is clicked, and I want to change that is pressed. And then any other click? No. Great. Okay. Images. So we're getting images. We're expecting it to be pressed, rollover, and normal. And how I have a difference between rollover and mouse over. Mouse enter. When the mouse enters the control. What's the skinning? Make it sound like? Where did I put my skinning? There we go. Okay, so skin map ID, if we go for rollover, okay, we see a bunch of those. If we see just over, you know what, let's look at every over. So I'm going to go ahead and select every over and copy it into something new. And we have rollover, or we also have mouse over. That's fantastic. It's not just me. Mouse over and rollover. Really the important thing is consistency. Rollover or mouse over. Now we're just going to do all of rollover for now. Okay, so we are accepting in a table which will have ideally normal, rollover, and pressed. And so we have some logic in here. So when the mouse goes over a button, we want to go ahead and log that we're over it. And that's mouse enter, so we want a corresponding mouse leave. I'm going to go ahead and bring this together. Mouse leave. So is over is true, is over is false. And then if we have clicked, well, we're pressing, it should be one thing, other as another. So rollover, yes. What are we doing here? If it's pressed, if we've clicked, that suggests we've left and come back in. And so we want it to be the pressed image. And that corresponds to this. If I click this, we get the dark. I leave, we get the rollover image. I come back in, it's dark again. So if we enter and the mouse is clicked, then we want it to be the clicked. Otherwise, we want it to be the rollover. So that's what's going on here. Is pressed. Then the background is the pressed. Otherwise, it's the rollover. Cool. Leave. When we leave, if we are leaving and we have still clicked it, then to imitate what's going on in game, click, leave, we're back to rollover, as opposed to leave, we're back to normal. So if it's pressed, is pressed the right term for this? Is down. Is mouse down. So if is mouse down, then we're doing the rollover image, otherwise we're doing the normal image. So same thing, when we do the mouse down, we want to set the mouse down to true. When we do mouse up, we set it to false. And then if we're in the air, if we're doing a mouse down, then by definition we're in it, and we're getting the pressed image. And when we're going up, then it's just a question of, did we release it while we're still over the button or off the button? If we release it off the button, we want to go to normal. If we release it on the button, then we want to go to rollover. So if we're over it, then do rollover. Otherwise, do normal. Yeah, so Lord Zach has put some of the mini events in there. Mouse down, mouse click, mouse left click, mouse pressed. So the mouse down, you get that when when the user has clicked the button but hasn't necessarily, when the user has pressed the button but hasn't necessarily released the button. A click is a mouse down followed by a mouse up within the control. If you do mouse down, leave the control and mouse up, it is not a click. And we can see that for the Hytbold Assistant. Click, leave, release. That did not fire the unload all. That was not a mouse click. It was a mouse down and a mouse up, but not every pair of mouse down and mouse up is followed by a mouse click. But every mouse click should have been preceded by both a mouse down and a mouse up. So a mouse click is a successful mouse down, mouse up pairing. Double clicks are tricky because you also will receive a single click, but a double click will be a click followed by another click in a short enough gap of time. I'm not sure if that's configurable within the API though. Little Redhead, when you say mouse down, I think a mouse is down and we need to get the mouse defibrillator. Don't worry, the mouse gets back up again. You're never going to keep it down. So this is the basic logic in order to emulate how enters, leaves, downs, ups behave within the in-game buttons. And if you do that, we can see in here, when we're doing the same thing. We get that rollover. When we click, we get a different image. When we leave, we're back to the rollover. When we release, we're back to the normal image. Yes, Lord Zach. Mouse will never let you down, never going to give me up. It's never going to hurt me. So basic logic, anytime you have a reactive button, a button that responds to the mouse being over, to being clicked, whatever, this is the exact same sort of logic that you need to replicate. So it makes sense to shove it in here. So what we want to do is then try to use that. This is going to be a control in all other respects. And I really want to call it a reactive button control now instead of just a reactive button, because it's not a button, but it is a button, because buttons just have click handlers just like anything else. So we're gonna the only other thing we want to do is we want this thing to be the size. Well, do we care about the size of it? I don't know. Every other control, you set the size externally. So let's go ahead and do that for right now and try to swap this in and see how that goes. So make reactive button. What we want to do is, instead of making a turbine.ui.control, we want to make a reactive button. But in order to do that, we want to have those images. Now we have those images, but we do want to make sure that these things are named correctly. So mouse over, we're going to go ahead and replace with dot mouse over is now dot rollover. Okay. Pressed, normal, pressed, and normal. Okay, those are fine, I think. So what we want to do is make a reactive button. And we want to go ahead and pass in our images. All right, why do you think it takes a maximum of 0 arguments? Well, we'll have to deal with that later. That is not unusual to see. Okay, so that should handle the mouse enter, the mouse down, the mouse up, and the mouse leave. Lord Zach says, did you not import it? That's a good point. I do need to import it, but that's not the specific issue. It's a IntelliSense issue, not an actual problem. Okay, so reactive button, but I will have needed to import it. So that's a very good point. Now there's an IntelliSense problem where, because object-oriented isn't really built into the language, it's being bolted on after the fact. This IntelliSense isn't seeing this as the invocation of the constructor. It is seeing it. In fact, I wonder if I could just say constructor. Yeah, probably not. It's not seeing it as an invocation of a constructor returning an object. It's seeing it as probably this class definition, and it's not digging into it at another level to it. So, yeah, because the constructor is getting called with a self. It's a whole thing. So I think the IntelliSense is just getting weirded out by that, and I don't have the know-how to fix it right now, but I do have the know-how to ignore it. Now you can actually do that with a couple ways. You can ignore it, or you can say disable the diagnostic in the workspace. And if you do that, you'll just stop getting that notification. Exactly. We're just going to cover our eyes to it. Now, I don't think that's a good idea to ignore it. So I'm going to see if I can find that. Settings. Yep, we're gonna kill that. Because most of the time, I do care about that warning. It's just in these constructor invocations of custom classes. That's okay. So we're going to go ahead and do set parent, set position, set size, set blend mode. Actually, set blend mode, let's go ahead and hoist that in here. So instead of button, that's going to be self. Background, we want to go ahead and hoist that. Image is normal. And then we just need the mouse click. Okay, so that make reactive button is now offloading that effort to the reactive button. And the other things it's really doing are parent, left, top, and all that. Let's see if it works. Well, these are pretty reactive, although we're not currently doing anything with that. So let's see. Let's go ahead and pass in a function just so we can see that these are doing something. So new line, we're going to do an anonymous function, turbine.shell.writeLine, left arrow, end. And we're going to do the same thing with the right arrow here. And we know this is the helmet, so we're going to say helmet left arrow and helmet right arrow. All right, right arrow. Let's actually scroll down. And left arrow, and right arrow. Cool. So that's all good. Lord Zach says you don't need new keyword in Lua. Well, now you put me on the spot. I don't know. No. So when we're making a control, we are making turbine UI control whatever. And there's no new keyword that, or if there is, I am doing it wrong. But I think I've got it right. But when you do custom classes, drop down .create, this is getting around the problem that Galuhad wasn't doing a class-based object-oriented. Instead, he was declaring a drop-down as just a table. That table now has a create function, and that function will go ahead and probably return something. Oh my goodness, let's scroll to the end of that. All of that was declaring all of these things, and then it just returns it. So it's returning a drop-down from this function, and that is a table. Everything in Lua is tables. Every object is a table. So that's returning a table that has all the behavior that you want and contains all the things that you want. But that's all it is. It's one function called dropdown.create, and within that, a bunch of subfunctions are declared. So, the mouse enter, mouse leave, mouse down, all of those things, all of this is happening in that one creation function. Certainly a way to do it. But no, when we're declaring UI elements like a new window or a new control, we just say the image is this thing. And by invoking it like this, that should fire off a constructor and give you that thing. Lord Zach wants me to try something. Here, let me go ahead and commit my change first. Moved reactive button logic to its own file. Okay. So, Lord Zach wanted to see what would happen if I went ahead and called the constructor directly. And the problem is the constructor inherently has a self-parameter that should be passed in. And we're not going to get that. Oh, with braces. Sure. So that's not working. And what's the error message? On line 69, we can see that button is nil. And the problem is the constructor doesn't return something. And that's true with a lot of object-oriented languages, is that your constructor is acting on an object, but it doesn't return necessarily anything. So other thing we can do is bypass that by having basically an empty constructor and then have a different function besides the constructor, like make, reactor button dot make or whatever, and that we pass it into. And so we could go ahead. Now, it is an interesting question. What happens if we return self? Interesting. Well, one of them doesn't work, but the left one doesn't show up and the right one does. Fascinating. So the other thing we could do is, instead of doing it in one case, we could do button constructor images, right? So we could try to do that. Attempt to local button 9. Oh, of course, because I did it in the constructor, and the constructor happens implicitly here. Yeah. So we can't independently call the constructor. We have to do it that way. Anyway, like I said, this is bolted on, and the IntelliSense maybe doesn't understand how that works, and that's okay. We'll deal with that. So the image carousel, what we want is we want to go ahead and create a left button, create n image spaces, create image / text spaces, create a right button, and that'll be a good start. What do we have? left and right button that scrolls which images are visible. Perfect. And so we want to incorporate some of these things that we were playing around within the quest window. So these things of making the arrow buttons, that all needs to be in the image carousel control. However, it's a lot of extra logic for making left arrow or right arrow. So instead we're just going to go ahead and say function make a left arrow button and also a make right arrow button. I think. And that's going to delegate to the make arrow button function. And what's that going to look like? So it's going to look very similar. So we're doing a left arrow button. So get rid of all of that. We can untab. And then that's going to call make arrow button. And make sure our parameters are the same. Great. Same thing with the right arrow button. We're going to go ahead and say that it's always the case. And now at that point, we can maybe consolidate some of these declarations. I wonder if there's a refactoring that we could do. Oh, I missed some of my refactorings. Okay, so what we can do is all of these in one go. So images equals, and then normal equals that pressed equals that one, and rollover equals that one. Okay, so we can at least inline that, and you could actually do that, this anonymous declaration as the parameter. Instead of passing images, you could just do that. It seems a little bit clunky to me. So instead of declaring that, in fact, we're using this often enough that you could almost see declaring it as an inherent variable of the class. Like these are our images, left images, right images, but eh. So we're going to go ahead and copy this, and it's just going to be right norm and right pressed and right rollover, and that'll be good enough for right now. And that's going to be make arrow button. And that was defining that. Make arrow button, and that's the parent, left top, click function, and images. Cool. What's the arrow button going to look like? Well, make reactor button, it's going to look like that. Okay. So we set the parent to parent, we got the left, we got the top, we've got that click function, we've got an explicit size that I do want to fix. Fix this sizing, but it's fine for now. Okay. So for the creation of buttons, Lord Zach says, I was debugging just now, an error failed to compare two elements in the array. Someone forgot to put a name on one of the items. Fantastic. Yeah, sometimes debug messages are almost less than useless. Something happened. Cool. Maybe we could do better next time. Alright, so we want those left arrows and right arrows to start being created by the carousel. So this is going to be we're passing in self as the parent. Actually, we're not passing. Oh, we are a UI control. That's fine. Self and self. The positions of these things need to be fixed, but that's going to be a later. So make left and make right. Left, top. Ah, yes, we're getting rid of those directions. And self. Okay, so that's going to be a function, and that's carousel left arrow. Okay. That's going to be make a right arrow button, and that's going to be self. Awesome. One of the things I really like about doing something object-oriented, whether the functions you're manually putting on the table, whether you're declaring them with the class name here, is getting them out of that global namespace. These make arrow button functions, I don't want them hanging around because, yeah, just not a fan. So instead, let's go ahead and local helm carousel equals image carousel control. Now, what do we think is going to be passed in? We think images is going to be passed in, and that's going to be, at the very least, let's see, local helm equals, and we had some ideas of what that would look like. So image and text. So image equals that, and text equals, we're going to hard code this for right now, but we would want this to be a localized string, but this is going to be winter helm. Actually, just winter. That's fine. And then we can do something very similar because we want to be able to test this with multiple entries. So let's just hope that we do regal and balladeer, or possibly balladeer. So regal and number 3 balladeer. Okay, so we have a basic images that we're going to pass on in. And in our constructor, we can also take other things. There's a number visible. We're going to go ahead and pass this in. Are we? Defaults to 1. Okay, max image width, max image height. Probably won't default to anything. Starting leftmost image. I'm fine ignoring the rest of those for now. So we would want a carousel, and for that we're going to go ahead and carousel. We do want to go ahead and say set parent to dress up area, and we want to do some of the same things. We want to set background no, but we want to set the position to something. In this case, it's actually going to be 0, 0. And setting the size. That I'm not sure about, but we were doing something like 150. Okay, and without the helmet, and without all that. So that's going to change this dramatically. Image carousel, attempt to call global make arrow button. Excellent. By deleting some of that stuff, we're going to fix some bugs in here. So make arrow button, that needs to be a class function invocation. There we go. Awesome. So we do have these buttons. We can see carousel right arrow, carousel left arrow. What we don't have is the image inside. Okay, so as we're creating this, we need to go ahead. Now we have choices. We can either have a single image space, or we can have a table of images, an array of images, and just choose which one is visible. Uh, I would have the instinct that loading images in is going to be more computationally expensive than just having the three of them preloaded and choosing which one is visible. Seems like a micro optimization, but just thinking about it, I guess it depends. Like if we had a carousel with like 50 images, loading them all ahead of time makes for very responsive, but loading them as we need them and then keeping them in memory makes it a little bit slower responsiveness, maybe. With modern computers, not so much. But maybe it's a more responsible thing to do memory-wise. Okay, so we would want local... Actually, is it local? It's local for now. Local images equals... We're going to make a table. And then, oh, haha, we're already getting an images in. Oh, that's inconvenient. Image controls. Lauren Zach says, oh no, please don't use the RAM I need for my Chrome tabs. That's fair. Actually, how much RAM is being used here? Dun, 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 dun. Oh, only 45 megs for this API tab here. That's not terrible. Seems a bit excessive, but yeah. Now, on the one hand, 45 megs for a browser tab seems like a lot. On the other hand, my system has more than that. System has 32 gigs, or just under 32 gigs. So, whoopsie. Let's be generous and say that was 50 megs divided by 31.7 times 1,000. So that browser tab is 0.15%. Or I could have 634 browser tabs open and not exhaust physical memory. I feel like that's okay. I rarely have more than 600 tabs open. Zach says, I'm using Edge and it's consuming 1.2 gigabytes. Yeah, but again, depending on your computer, that might be like a few percent of memory. And in today's web-centric way of working with the world, consuming less than 10% of your physical memory on your main window into the internet, maybe that makes sense. The stream is 570 megabytes. I'll see what I can do. That's going to be a lot more on my hard drive after I'm done recording. Okay, so what this is going to be, we need to create image and text controls. And we have two choices. We can either make another class that is just the concept of an image with a text subtitle, or we can not do that. I think I'll resist the urge for right now and maybe change my mind later. And so what this would be a control that has a control image and also a label. And if you want to be really fancy someday, you can specify whether it's going to be below or above. We're just going to make it below right now. And so this is going to be a table of controls that contain image and text. So I'm going to muse a little bit about what this will look like, but we're reaching the end of the stream time. So this will be an ongoing project to create this carousel and then make use of it. So while I'm musing on that, if anyone has any last minute questions, comments, concerns that you want to toss into the stream chat, now is a great time to do it. And we'll get to those as we're finishing up here. Otherwise, certainly we'll be back next week and we can look at it then. Yeah, I'm going to turn off the mini-map. Okay, so we're making controls that contain a control and a label. Lord Zach says, I was looking more into this Lua constructors and they seem to be using new instead. There's also the question of, I think, Lord Zach, that we're using the turbine version of this. So if we go into plugins, turbine, we're looking at the class.lua. And so it's entirely possible that the code in here is an let's say outdated way of doing object-oriented programming in Lua. But it is a fact that the current embedded version of Lua is a sandboxed version of Lua 5.1, I think. So anything that relies on a newer version of Lua or comes with a newer version of Lua is kind of a non-starter. So it's whatever we can write ourselves or whatever we can pull in from the files provided by SSG. They're named a turbine for historical reasons, but this is available to us and anything else we can write ourselves and anything that's in Lua 5.1 that hasn't been restricted, like network access and file system access and those kind of things. So, and now the key is, this is Lua code, right? All of this is Lua code. So if we felt confident modifying this, we could do so. We could add things, we could remove things, change things up. Yeah, deleting files is exactly a thing that we can't do in the 5.1 sandbox that we have. Although, you are allowed to create and overwrite files within the plugin data directory. So, a misbehaving plugin could overwrite the save files of other plugins. But I wouldn't recommend it because then people won't install your plugin. But it's very convenient. When I wrote Festival Buddy 2, I could just go ahead and load the Festival Buddy save file and then continue using it because any plugin has access to every file in the plugin data directory. Borg says, hello, so I want to start using plugins. Which program is good for LOTRO? Lord Zach has done the plugins command. So first of all, the LOTRO plugin compendium is very useful for adding new plugins. It's much easier than manually installing them. Let's go ahead and load up the plugin compendium. This is a third-party program you can download from that link at lotrointerface.com. And it will be able to speed things up. So let's say, for instance, I wanted to add in the reminders plugin. I search for it, I click it, I press add, and we are done. That's all it takes. Because I've already got the game running, I need to hit the green arrow to refresh the list of them, and then reminders is here. Perfect. However, not every plugin is available in the LOTRO plugin compendium, either because they haven't asked to be or because their file structure was not compatible with what LOTRO plugin compendium is looking for, whatever is in that zip file. So some of them you'll just need to find by going to lotrointerface.com. A list of some of the more common ones is there in chat. Buff Bars, D-Tracker, Kiki Inventory, Minstrel Buff 2, Opaque Quest Tracker, Titan Bar, Travel Window 2, and Sequence Bars, Combat Analysis, Daily Tasks, and More Map. Those are all things that people have been used. But really there's a question of what are you looking for? So for instance, if you're looking for a class-specific plugin, maybe you play a Warden, and you're looking for something to help you with gambits, then you might go to the class-specific category of LOTRO interface, might go to Warden, and look at what's available. Gambit Helper 2 and Warden Ease 2 are both names that I recognize from doing that. Or you might go into the Minstrel and find Minstrel Buff, Minstrel Mentor, which I'm not sure what that is, and Minstrel 2. Minstrel Mentor. Oh, nice. Cool. So if you're looking for a class-specific thing, oh, you want to be able to play music. Awesome. So the one that you're going to want to start with is Songbook, or possibly Songbook 2. This is a nice way to visualize what songs you have available to you, and to have some shortcut buttons to enter music mode, do synchronization with people in your fellowship, and so on. But Songbook Songbook requires a little extra processing, so let's go ahead and look at that for a minute. Songbook. Install complete. So let's go into our documents. In your Lord of the Rings Online folder, you can have music files. And something that's very important to understand is that plugins cannot see your music directory. And so if a plugin wants to see this, the answer is a plugin can have, for instance, a program that it uses to go ahead and get the information from your music directory into your plugin data directory. In this case, that's songbook.hta. You open this up, you select which account you want to build it for, and you say go. It does it. It tells you what happened. Now, in game, I can come into my Songbook, I can load Songbook, and it knows about all of those files. Let's see. It defaults to an icon here by the radar. I click it, and down below is everything in the directory I'm in, and then I can go into a subdirectory. So these buttons at the top, you can toggle music mode, you can just play a song, or you can play with sync. If you're the leader of your band, you can go ahead and indicate that you're starting the sync, all of these things. And you have an alias to tell people, what are you playing? Neat. All of that is great, and all of it really helps. There's a version of that floating around that some of the music community uses that I don't think is on LOTRO interface. So if you see a songbook, I think it's BB, that's what that is, and it has neat improvements. But you don't need a plugin in order to play music. If you want, you can just enter your music mode /music. You do need an instrument equipped, but once you have an instrument equipped, you can enter music mode. You can play music freehand on your keyboard, but you can also just play ABC music files that you have downloaded on your computer. Lord Zach, I heard they might add a new class. What could it be? We have heard that they are going to add a Mariner class as we leave Gondor and, well, as we leave Minas Tirith and head south towards Harad, towards Umbar. And so there was talk about, oh, is it going to be a Corsair class? I think they've said the English name is going to be Mariner. Corsairs do have some pretty in league with Sauron implications. Okay. Trumpet Monkey, can you choose which LOTRO music it plays in-game? In a limited sense, yes. Housing lets you slot in a music box to determine what songs play while you are in the house. But otherwise, no. The game music is determined by what region you are in. You can, of course, change the volume of the in-game music. Go to Options, Audio, Music Volume. You can change that. But the songs that play are determined by the region that you're in, or if you're in a house that has overridden that, what the house music is. So, let's see, do I have any instruments? I've got an instrument carry also. I must have instruments. Okay, instrument, large instrument carry all. Do I know how to play any of these? How about a fiddle? Great. So when you are in game, if you type /music, you will enter music mode. Whatever instrument you have equipped in your instrument/ranged weapon slot, that's the instrument that you're going to be playing. And you do want to make sure that you have your player music volume turned up, otherwise you won't be able to hear that. Okay. At this point, you can play things manually by using your number keys. Hopefully that comes on through. And the color of the notes heading up from your head will tell other people whether you are pressing the keys manually or whether it's playing automatically through one of your ABC files. If you are playing through an ABC file, or if you want to, I should say, you want to, first of all, you want to know the name of it, or you're using a plugin that tells you the name. And so I'll have to remember what I want to play. We'll just come out into the tested right now. So if we type /music help, does it tell us uses /music /play help? Couldn't open the file. Well, here's where the songbook plugin is going to be helpful. So if we hover over any of these buttons up here, it's going to tell us what that shortcut is. So /play space quote whatever. Awesome. So /play space tested what did I name those things? Popcorn. Sure. Popcorn.abc. It says you begin playing popcorn. And oh, good point. Aaron Bard asked if it was the color or if it was the notes being open or closed. I don't do music nearly as much as Little Redhead. I believe the open notes like we're seeing is pre-recorded. If I do /music, no, those are open as well. I agree they should be closed. Well, maybe you always see the same ones, but other people see them differently. I'm not sure. Anyway, so you can manually play. If you are manually playing, you'll want to take a look at your key bindings. Down below that. Your key bindings will allow you to, first of all, play notes. So we can see your C is 1, your C3, I should say. You can go up and down a couple of octaves. Your C sharp is going to be control. Whoopsie. Sorry. Yeah, so control 2 would be C sharp. Really, that's kind of a D flat there. Then you have D, then you have E flat or D sharp. And so you can manually play a chromatic scale. You can also skip octaves in some way, I think. But it's going to be a lot easier if you, instead of needing to press control or whatever to get your sharps and your flats, if you really are interested in playing music freehand, you'll want to bind your sharps and flats to separate keys so that otherwise, if you're pressing control, every key that you're pressing is going to be sharp. So I can't just play C sharp here. It's going to be C and E and G sharp. Or, yeah, there we go. And so better to bind them all to individual keys. But if you're going to do that on a QWERTY style keyboard, then there's definitely some challenges there. But it could work. And then we can see you can bind all the, it says C2, C3, C4, and C5. So you can get 3 full octaves of key bindings if you are trying to. Lord Zach, I will not play Stairway to Heaven. Thank you. Aaron Barr says, Jersey on Laravel server has a file that talks about best keybinds for piano config or guitar config for keyboard. Yeah, I'm sure there's people who have given a lot of thought to this. If you have a external keyboard that is plugged into the computer, it's quite possible that you could do key bindings from that. I haven't tried it at all. I think it'd be awesome if you could.
No, she was for her actual keyboard.
But yes, on a QWERTY keyboard, you can definitely get a full octaves chromatic keys on there. Doing more than one octave on your keyboard is definitely going to be challenging, just remembering what's what, and also getting your fingers to press that. So you might want to do key bindings based on the song that you're playing at that point to make it easier. I thought there was a way to jump up octaves. It looks like Shift on here is going up an octave. So, but what it doesn't have is a way to do jumping down an octave. So let's see. Oh, oops. Haha. Okay, so you can artificially, you can manually add in some options for jumping up and down. Jumping up octaves is going with Shift here. Control is being your accidentals. Alt you could use for going down, but that's going to take some time to learn. Apparently, you can stop playing a song with a key. What key are you? Anyhow, so in-game music, you can choose which instrument you're playing with. Obviously, I just grabbed a bardic fiddle, but there's all sorts of instruments in-game, specifically bassoon, fiddle, bagpipe, bassoon, clarinet, cowbell, drum, flute, harp, horn, pibgorn, theorbo, more cowbell, and probably some other ones that I'm missing. People do love the pibgorn, Lord Zach. Oh, yeah, there's a cat. I wonder if I can capture it on stream. Excellent. Hey, Casper.
He was looking right at it too. That's great.
What do you think? Okay. You just do you. Okay, so that's the in-game music system. You can play whatever instrument you equip. That's what the sound that people are going to hear. Whatever notes you play on your keyboard, people will hear that as well, if they have chosen to hear it by having the player music volume turned up. If they have it turned off, they will see that you're playing, but they won't hear it. And then you can also have pre-programmed music files that you either download from the internet or write yourself. ABC files, just like Lua files, are human readable, kind of, depending on your tolerance for music notation. So in this case, you're going to be seeing ABC file notation that indicates what notes should be played, what speed they should be played at, what octave they should be, and it's possible to read this, but it's going to be a lot nicer to use a program like Maestro to look at this in a visual way. Now, Maestro doesn't let you edit it, but it will let you go ahead and see it visually and see what's going on and associate different tracks with different instruments and also hear it, what it's going to sound like. So that's the preview of what it would sound like in-game if you have bound Lute of Ages and Basic Flute and Basic Clarinet and Basic Drum to these 4 tracks. Lord Zach says, do the summer instruments sound different? I would assume so. The Maestro program has a basic concept of what these different instruments sound like. But I think in-game, the whole point of offering variations on them is both a cosmetic and possibly a sound difference. The summer instruments definitely look different, though. I wonder if I can get the bassoon out. Let's grab Do I know how to play things? Yeah, okay. So the look and feel of this thing, you can see it's got a light wood to it, and it's got this filigree stuff all over it. And I think the look of it's going to be very different depending on what instrument you have. I don't know if they sound different. But one of the nice things about these summer instruments is if your whole band is kitted out with them, it's very stylistically different. So if we go look at the sprightly fiddle, we can see looks like a pretty standard fiddle there. Interesting, carryalls don't disappear with F12. But if we look for the summer fiddle, you can see it's got that white wood look to it right there. And so even if it didn't sound different, just aesthetically getting that for each of your different band members could be very cool, especially if it coordinates with the outfits. Okay, and Bart says summer instruments sound like the basic regular instruments for the most part. Awesome, thanks for checking on that. But there are variations of instruments, like I think the like the brusque bassoon probably sounds different than the basic bassoon. The traveler's trusty fiddle probably sounds different than the basic fiddle, that kind of thing. I have to remember to go grab. I discovered you cannot buy an instrument from the Midsummer Barterer unless you are able to play that instrument. And I wanted to grab a bunch of them and stick them into my instrument carryall. So I need to remember to do that tonight with my main, who can play all the instruments. Buy Midsummer Instruments. I need to go remember to do that so that I have those. Because I do want to have a full set of them, or multiple full sets of them. Cool. Great questions. Pamela thought that Pipgorn was a typo, but recently found out it's an actual instrument. Yes. Lord Zach, submitting a new bug. Carryall stay with UI hidden. Yeah, I would assume that's a bug. Like, it should hide, but it's one of the things, and this hits plugin developers so often, is Windows don't by default hide. Like when you make a window, like it doesn't have that default hiding behavior. So plugin developers, and we should really make a library, like a common library that we can all use for this, for the F12 key for the hiding the HUD, and the escape key for closing things. You have to pay attention to them yourself as a developer. You have to say, should I close for the escape key? And if so, let's go ahead and do that. Should I respond to the F12 key? Usually yes. Oh well, it's a whole other thing. Cool. Yeah, Aaron Bar points out, in case you didn't know, a lot of classes do not know how to play certain instruments. So, let's see, where would I go for that? Music. The LOTRO Wiki has a table of who knows what when they start. So, the instrument skills table, I believe this is up to date. You can see that the minstrel starts off with basic cowbell and clarinet and flute, harp, horn, and lute, and pibgorn, and will learn the rest pretty automatically as they level, I believe. The rest of the classes will only know some things, like all of them at level 5 can know how to play bassoon and fiddle, and they all start with the ability to play lute. Many of them will learn either clarinet or horn, but the rest of these need to be taught by a minstrel. And so minstrels can either teach you directly, and that's a 5-day cooldown on globally across all their mentoring, or they can scribe scrolls of it, in which case all of their mentoring goes on a 10-day cooldown. So the number of instruments that can be played by non-minstrels out there is kind of limited by how many minstrels are willing to teach others. And not every minstrel can teach every one of these instruments right off the bat. There's a whole other listing. If you go to the minstrel mentoring section on the wiki, you can see some of these you just learn, and that's the cowbell, pibgorn, horn, and clarinet. And the rest of them, bagpipes, drums, flute, harp, more cowbell, and theorbo. There are items that drop, usually endgame Shadows of Angmar content that you can learn how to. So, for instance, mentoring the drums. If you come in here, mentoring the drum was going to drop from level 45 to 50 mobs, such as blah, blah, blah. And so if you have people who are regularly running Shadows of Angmar content, they're probably going to see some of these drop, and then your minstrel can flesh out their skills that way, but you might be able to find them on the auction house. Let's go, auction house, mentor. Mentoring the drum. Oh, awesome. I'm just going to buy that. I'm sure one of the minstrels between me and Little Redhead needs to learn how to mentor the drum. Fantastic. So that's the thing. People will usually, hopefully, put those up at the auction, and because minstrels need these items, one or two of them might be barter. I can't remember. But they need these items in order to learn how to do it. And a lot of these instruments you can only learn if a minstrel will teach you. I've actually just set up reminders, the plugin reminders on, because I have multiple minstrels on this server that can do mentoring, 2 or 3 of them. And so I've set up reminders for each of them to go ahead and start producing those tomes. Manual of the drums, manual of the flute, because recently Aaron Bard wanted to learn how to play over here on Treebeard, and you just can't be like, here, I'll teach you all the things. Like, there's that 5-day cooldown if you're teaching in person per minstrel. Borg says, I am trying to play music, but I get a message that says problem with ABC notation. What does that mean? That means that LOTRO tried to load your ABC file and encountered a syntax error, a problem with how the file was written. So I would try playing a different file. Chances are just that one file. There's probably a character that's wrong in there somewhere. And if you are familiar with ABC notation, you might be able to fix it. Or if you can find where you downloaded that file, maybe you accidentally typed a character in there that LOTRO wasn't expecting. But that's a problem with a specific ABC file, and that's the music file. Lord Zach says SSG would make bucks if they sold cooldown reductions in the store for minstrel mentoring. Yeah, I think that is true. But like I said, I've set up the reminders plugin. I've just said, hey, remind me every 10 days on my 3 minstrels. So over the course of the next couple of months, I'm going to build up a backlog of 2 to 10 manuals of each type, so that when someone is like, oh, I have an alt who wants to learn music for a band, we'll just be able to go, here's 3 manuals, go nuts. Instead of being like, oh no, how are we going to get you taught? Borg asks, where do I find these files? You're looking in the your documents, Lord of the Rings Online, and in there's music. And this is where your ABC files are. Abraxa says, I would go into the file with a text editor to make sure there's no additional text. Sometimes people add notations that are not in the ABC format, and it confuses the LOTRO player. Yeah, if you just downloaded an ABC file from online and it wasn't a LOTRO-specific site, it's possible that they're doing extra stuff. So at the beginning of the file, you're going to see some notations, something, something. Those are going to be things like what track it is, what's the title of it, what's what's the notation in this case 4/4, all of these basic things, and then you're going to see the actual note to the music. And if you see anything else that's not that, that could be causing the problem. But other thing that you can do is just go to websites that are advertising music for LOTRO specifically, and then you're a lot more likely to have ABC files in the format that LOTRO is expecting. So yeah, Lord of the Rings Online in your Documents folder, and in the Music folder is where your ABC files should be. So that's the first thing. Are your ABC files there? King says, where can I download those files? I have a text document in that folder. I would do a search on your favorite search engine for LOTRO ABC files. LOTRO ABC files. You're going to find links out there. Bards of a Feather sounds very plausible. And from here, you can download different collections of ABC files. Now, it's kind of up to you. Once you've downloaded those files to kind of, like I have a bunch of them here, but I don't know how well they sound. I don't know which instruments I want to play them with. So downloading it is kind of the first step. And there's a whole rabbit hole you can get into for music files. But actually getting an ABC file into your music folder and then hearing it in game is kind of the first step. Lord Zach, he posted a link, but I don't see what it is in Chatty. Let's see. What is that? How do I allow that? Sorry, Lord Zach, I'm not sure how to allow that here on the official LOTRO stream channel, but yeah, perhaps if that was a different site, you might offer some search engine search terms for them to find it. Where's Little Redhead when I need her? She is probably running Festival, given it's the last day. Okay, so yes, once you have ABC files, they should look something like this. Once you have a few that work, you can start comparing. You can start comparing working ABC files to not working ABC files, and maybe see what's up with them. Or there's just so many that do work, you can just not worry about the ones that don't. That being said, I highly recommend the Maestro program. Maestro program knows how to talk ABC. It also knows how to talk MIDI. So you can load in a MIDI file and then go through the work of associating which tracks you want to be with which instruments and export that into an ABC file. It's fantastic. You can pre-listen to what the tracks are. So for instance, this Popcorn ABC file, I downloaded a Popcorn MIDI file, loaded it into Maestro, and then was able to say, oh, hey, what is in the MIDI is a nylon guitar. That's going to be a lute of the ages. The flute, okay, cool, basic flute, clarinet, cool, drum, awesome. And then you can assign these and spit it out. And in the actual ABC file, you now have 4 tracks, track 1, 2, 3, and 4. And so if Maestro has written out the ABC file, it's going to be a good ABC file. It's great. So Maestro is, let's see, github.com/digero/Maestro, apparently. Highly recommended if you're getting into the music scene. Besides everything else, you can preview. Interesting. You can. Oh, I see. You can preview what the song looks like visually, and also you can hear it. So, this section right here, you can come over here and say, oh, what is that going to sound like? Awesome. And you can see what that's going to be. You can also see if the notes are going to be in that 3-octave range that you have. ABC files will let you write a 5-octave span of notes, but LOTRO only supports 3 of those octaves. And so we can see right now the basic clarinet line. If you were looking at it from a lute of ages perspective, those notes are too high. The ones in red are going to be shifted by LOTRO down into the next closest register. And that's going to sound weird. But if we come on into the clarinet part, we can see the clarinet voice has different registers, and so all of those notes are fine for the clarinet. Whereas some of those lute of ages notes, if those were playing on the clarinet, some of those are too low, and those are going to be automatically hoisted up into the next available octave. And so this is a great way to visualize are the notes going to be playable by the instrument? And if not, you can tell Maestro, hey, let's go ahead and bump those notes up or down octaves until the majority of them are not read. So, if you are getting into the LOTRO music scene, you can just play files that others have provided. You can start making your own files. You can start making your own from existing MIDIs, or you can start handwriting your own. The sky's the limit. There's a whole sub-game where you can just only do music and happen to do the music within LOTRO and never actually play the game because you're too busy playing the music game. If you want. Lord Zach says, back in my day, I would download guitar tabs, convert that to MIDI, and then convert the MIDI to ABC. Yeah, absolutely. There's multiple ways to do this. Okay. Awesome questions. I am definitely sort of a music noob, as it were. I know the basics of the music scene, but there are people who spend a lot of time and effort being really good at both playing music in game, both from a mechanistic standpoint of how do you start the song, to a more performative aspect of how do you get people excited about the fact that you're playing song in game. And there are some people who do the freestyling. There's people who focus more on the crafting of the songs that are getting played in the game. There's people who write music or write lyrics for these songs, and sometimes the songs are original. Sometimes they're writing kind of parody or filk lyrics for existing songs. Like I said, the sky's the limit. If that's where you want to spend your time, there's almost no end to what you can do with it. Okay, well. I was an excellent diversion. I've definitely gone a little bit over, so we are rapidly heading to the point where I need to wrap up here. Okay, I'm not seeing any last minute comments coming on into chat. Thank you all so much for contributing, for asking questions, for answering others' questions. That is everything we're going to cover today. What do you think, Casper? Is that everything? Yeah. Leave me alone. I just want to nap. Okay, that's everything we're going to cover today. Thank you so much for joining me on this exploration of LOTRO plugins. I do hope to see you here next week. And until then, keep plugging along. All right, bye-bye now.